Let's talk about what happens when an entity neither fully transfers nor retains all the risks and rewards of ownership of a financial asset and still retains some control over it. In this situation, the entity continues to recognize the transferred asset to the extent of its continuing involvement. Essentially, this means the entity still has some exposure to changes in the value of the transferred asset. Here's an example to make it clearer. If an entity guarantees the transferred asset, its continuing involvement is limited to the lower of the amount of the asset or the maximum amount the entity might need to repay under the guarantee. Essentially, the guarantee defines the extent of involvement. Now, consider a scenario where the entity writes or purchases an option on the transferred asset. In this case, the involvement depends on the amount of the asset the entity can repurchase. For instance, if the entity writes a put option on an asset measured at fair value, its involvement is the lower of the fair value of the asset or the option's exercise price. Another example is when the continuing involvement is in the form of a cash-settled option or similar provision on the transferred asset. The calculation of involvement remains similar to that for non-cash settled options, relying on factors like the asset's fair value and the terms of the option. In all these cases, the key idea is that the entity's continuing involvement is tied to its exposure to the changes in the value of the transferred asset. This ensures that even when ownership is partially transferred, the remaining risks and responsibilities are accurately reflected. Thank you for watching.